Good morning. Good morning, Tamara Brown.
Well, good morning, Doni. How are you?
I'm good, Tamara.
Wow.
We have the MBE WBE. We're talking about contracts, bidding, the whole nine. Busy session last week, huh?
Yes, yeah. Last week was really great. Your guest, I think, was her name Cynthia,
Cynthia
or
Washington.
yeah. Cynthia Washington was really great. She was able to give us a lot of information on her services, getting people qualified, her engagement with the federal government, and trying to get minority businesses in the business with the federal government. So that was a really great guest. We also talked about, the amount of funds that the federal government spends on goods and services with small businesses, which was, a large number. And Cynthia did comment that there's 23 agencies actually report that data. It may not be completely accurate, but, I have seen the program work. And so we have a really special guest that's going to come on shortly to explain to us how the program worked for his businesses, plural. And I think it will be really interesting to hear that. I think it's best to hear from people that have actually experienced it. We were kind of like talking about what it does and saying what we think it does, but it's great to talk to someone that has actually started from the ground up in a program like that. So I'm looking forward to that.
So let's just go through a couple of things. We're talking about Black businesses. Now I got to say this. We have a guest coming on a little later, Walter Edwards. He despises the term MBE.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He's up to Harlem for the Black Business Commission, but he despises the term MBE. He prefers Black business. He says that we get lost in the sauce when we say minority. So I'll just caution you that when that elder comes on, please just let me. He gets upset because he's played that game, and he says unless you speak up, and he says by us speaking up, we empower our politicians to say Black business as opposed to minority. We're started off being for Black businesses to level the playing field, to correct historical disparities. Now you have white women fronting for white men. Everybody's a minority except Black people. And in a city like Baltimore, where Black people make up the majority, and you consider we have the majority of the elected officials, yet we're getting 4% on contracts.
That's interesting you say that, Doni. It is interesting you say that, because actually the Baltimore City program, which I'm familiar with, has sub goals that you're supposed to be setting on contracts over $1 million. And those sub goals are specific African American. They break it down. So it's not just an MBE goal, it's a sub goal that specifically targets any minority group that has two or more businesses that do that particular line item when you're setting the goals in an office like the MBE office. But the city has not enforced that. And that has, it generally has caused an issue. So the MBE could be any minority race. And again, I spoke up last week about that includes like a Portuguese in the minority program in Baltimore City specifically. In New York, they did exclude.
And the Portuguese, for the record, were heavy participants in the slave trade.
Just the heaviest.
You got 40 million Black people in America, but the Portuguese, as a result of slavery, there are 100 million Blacks in Brazil. Listen, we have Dina Joyce on deck. Dina, we had to shift things a tad, and we're going to bring you and your partner on at 10:30. Is that okay? Okay. So look, without further ado, because time is money and money is time, we have what I've learned is a phenomenal business person. And well, Tamara, let me pass the ball to you. I know how to bounce pass.
So we have Wayne Simmons joining us from New York, and I know a little bit about him. He is a businessman that has grown his veteran minority firm and graduated out of the program. It's been about 11 years since you've done any government contracting, but this is a success story in the federal contracting sector. And even though he hasn't been in that business for a while, I wanted to bring him on because he was so successful and because he is such a brilliant business person. And I'm not just saying this because this is my big brother. I'm saying it because it's a fact. So I would read his resume. He's a very humble person, but we can ask him some questions about his accomplishments, which he doesn't often talk about. I just think he's absolutely brilliant. And again, I'm not partial because he's my brother. It is simply the truth. So the audience will learn a lot from him. We have him for about 20 minutes, and we'd like to ask him some questions about how he grew his business before he sold his business. So welcome, Wayne.
Good morning. How are you guys doing?
Doing really well.
Wayne, I want to be a 7-time Telly Award winner, man. I never even heard of Telly Awards. What's a Telly Award?
The Telly Awards are about digital marketing. So about 8 years ago, we launched a digital marketing campaign that had a small film in it about kind of a complicated topic, but we created a film and we distributed it through digital marketing and won some accolades for it.
But you are a god in this business with a little G, of course. I mean, but look, okay, Tamara, come on, you drive the ball. You drive the show.
So Wayne, I wanted to start about, so you are a veteran, and can you just give us some background? You did some work in intelligence, right? And then when you got out of the military, you worked for, well, why don't you explain it?
Sure. Yeah. So I did the usual: get out of the military, be all you can be. Finished college right after I got out of the military, and then I went to work for Ernst & Young, global consulting firm, and basically learned the business of consulting from the ground up. I took the mailroom mentality and sort of learned everything about the business and used that as my platform. And some years later, about 5 years later, 6 years later, I started my own business in the federal sector, which I knew nothing about, although I was in the Army for 8 years prior, and just kind of did the same thing, learn from the ground up. I spent 2 years in the basement of the Forrestal building, the Department of Energy, learning how government contracting works, and then kind of built from there, added people from there and built a firm. And then I sold that business in 2010. And since then, I've relocated to New York, and I work with clients more on the consumer brand clients on customer experience, but back to my commercial roots.
Thank you. So again, knowing my brother, you sold two businesses, right? It wasn't just one.
Yeah, I sold a small telecom firm before, like right at my first firm. I sold that to one of our clients. So I guess I understand the life cycle of a company and what it really takes and what it looks like. I'm no genius. It's just there's some basic principles that apply, and I think they're consistent whether you're in the federal market or not. So yeah.
Okay, so you were doing some federal consulting with your last firm. So for the audience that's watching, the small business owner, they tend, for our market, there may be some local contracting, and I believe some folks are watching in California and in different states, but I did want to focus on the federal. And so how would a minority business start? Like, how did you start? How did you get 8A certified? And how did that help your business grow?
Yeah, so I have a couple of principles that I'd like to talk through that may help answer that question broadly and maybe give a little bit of my experience. And I think first of all, I started off almost by accident. So as I mentioned, I came out of the telecom space, in the commercial world. If you remember back in 2000, it was a dot-com crash and telecom crash. So those clients disappeared. And in Washington, D.C., where I lived, it was about the federal government. So I basically pitched to a large integrator, Raytheon, as a single practitioner, as an expert in a particular area of telecom and IT. And I was brought into the Department of Energy to help them with that process. And that's how I got started. So I got started by selling myself as the brand first. And I did that for, as I said, for 2 years, and really got myself indoctrinated into the problems and challenges of the federal government. And then I partnered with Raytheon as my first couple of initiatives to branch out from there and build from there. but focusing on a very specific area of the federal space, consulting, C-level consulting. Started off with the CIO, and then went to CFOs and more of the agency and division heads, business consulting. So that was my game plan. That's how I started.
Okay, and so you were 8A certified, and how does that work? You have to be in business for a year?
Yeah, so the specific rules are clear on the website, on the SBA website, but I can kind of talk a little bit about sort of theoretical and then sort of the philosophical piece of it. I mean, you really have to be an ongoing, serious business concern to get into the 8A program and to be successful in it and to actually win contracts. So that's really come out my core message. It's like, although it's the federal government, it's a marketplace, and it requires a level of professionalism just like any other marketplace. There's no exception to that. So it's a real environment. You have to be a real business. So the 8A program specifies, requirements around that, but that's the core of it. You have to be an ongoing concern of business. It's not going to help you get started. It's an enabler. I call it, whether it's a veteran program or an 8A program or MBE program locally, it's a great procurement mechanism. It gets you into the conversation, but it's not a great marketing message. And what I mean by that is there are literally thousands of 8A firms and thousands of MBEs that you're competing with too. So you're not unique, so you have to have a compelling marketing message, a compelling offering that separates you from even that crowd. So back to the core message again, it has to be a viable, ongoing business. And that means having a brand that resonates. It means understanding the customer. It means, all the basics of business still apply.
Right. And so I did want to hit on that, because when we talk about minority businesses, and we talk about small businesses, I think what a lot of businesses miss is the branding and the marketing and setting themselves aside. And that's something we spoke about briefly last week, is trying something different. And what I've seen that you've done very well, you have entrepreneurs that are going to start a business and they're going to stay in the business for 50 years, and their business model stays the same for the 50 years. It's great. They pass it along. And then you have the serial mentality, the serial entrepreneur that builds onto something and then starts over, and which you've done, and you're constantly reinventing yourself, and that's part of branding and marketing. So it's one thing to have a business, but it's another thing to have a business that's constantly evolving and thinking about branding. So even if you're a construction company, a consulting firm, a law firm, anything, you have to, I think what you've done really well, and which I'd like to talk to the audience about, and which we fail to talk about a lot of times, is the importance of branding, who you are, what your brand means, and how you set yourself aside from those other businesses to compete, because you were competing on a level with the big companies. And he's not going to say again, I mean, when you are a small business and you're in Inc. 500 for a fastest growing business, I mean, you grew your business and it appeared in Inc. 500. So that's big. And so you're thinking beyond, again, being an 8A, not using a minority business kind of as a shelter, but going beyond that and competing with the non-MBE companies. So can you talk about the importance of branding and your philosophy around that, and how it's really helped you evolve?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it goes to the core of this whole conversation, because it is about differentiation. It is about having a unique proposition for the marketplace that resonates with the marketplace needs. And branding, I'm not talking about a logo, I'm talking about an idea that your unique proposition that separates you from everybody else. So my proposition was directly aligned with my experience. So I came out of the commercial world, and my proposition to government clients was, I'm going to bring commercial practices into government, full stop. So that's what I built my firm around. And everything about my firm was about that idea. So that was my brand. So if agencies were interested in becoming more like a commercial entity, running more like a business, we were the right firm for them. And it wasn't the right firm for everyone, but it was the right firm for that kind of client. So it just speaks to the idea of having something that's unique, that's differentiating, that you can actually back up in a real sense. And it helps you to separate from noise. I mean, it's a very, very crowded marketplace in the federal sector. There are thousands and thousands of companies from every state. Many countries, foreign countries are in the marketplace. Our allies are in it as well. So you literally have to find something that's unique and focused and compelling. And to your point about evolving and changing, it's really about, back to my earlier comment about knowing the customer. The customers are changing, so their priorities are constantly changing. In the federal sector, every administration has a different set of priorities, and every agency has a different set of priorities. So you have to evolve with that. If you're still playing last year's game, you're not going to be relevant to them. So you're not going to be prepared when those procurements come out to be able to go after them and win them. So branding, keeping close to the customer, understanding what the customer is all about, what their challenges are, and then building a brand, but building a brand that's durable and doesn't move, with every fluctuating administration or priority. And then on top of that platform, focusing on what the customers need.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. So again, I want to emphasize that I think we get stuck. A lot of our businesses, we get stuck in doing things the same way. You should always be educating and learning and changing how you're doing business. Because if you're doing business the same way you were when you started your business or 10 years into your business, then you're losing out. And you're definitely losing out. And I don't care what industry that is. So you said you started off as an independent consultant working for the Department of Energy. And when you sold your business to a large company, how many employees did you have at that time?
So I had about 50 employees and 40 contractors on there. We had a large contract with a bunch of subs on there. So that was my platform. It was about a 90-person firm.
Wow, that's
you were the prime. You were the prime.
Yes. So we flipped the script. I'm sorry, Doni. Go ahead. Say it again.
Just the significance of being a prime versus going for the sub.
Yeah.
And that's the difference with the federal program. Like our local program focuses more on our programs. It's focused more on subcontracting. And so I try to, what we don't see in a lot of local programs is a company growing and graduating out and being able to perform as a prime, which really you're starting to use that program. Then it's enabling, but not to a point of pure success, where you can sell your business or where you're really making a difference, where your growth is actually growing. So they're kind of stagnant. There's just very stagnant businesses. So can you tell us, like, how long did it take you to get into that sector where you were a prime contractor?
We won our first prime contract about 3 years from start. And so I want to reiterate, I spent 2 years by myself. It was just me because I literally had a lot to learn about the federal sector. So I was more than willing to do that. And I really didn't intend to build a firm in the federal space. So it just kind of came. And so in year 3, we started winning prime contracts and we never looked back. And I don't think we had subs after that. So I think by taking time to learn the space, learn the dynamics, build relationships, I was able to come out the gate and become a prime. And it just felt like I want to have creative control over the work that we were doing. And in order to do that, I want to be a prime and had to be a prime. And I guess I made some decisions because I had a lot of opportunities to be subs, but I really didn't want that because it was inconsistent with my brand message about bringing commercial practices in the government. So if I wasn't going to be able to do that through a prime, then I wasn't going to, win that work or do that work. So a little bit of sort of discipline around what you're trying to do and commitment to what you're trying to do is important as well. So again, all this is nothing new. This is all business 101, right? Having a compelling brand and sticking to it and being absolutely obsessed about it, frankly.
That's right. And so I that's one thing I really admire is when you stick to the brand. And that's what a lot of companies and businesses just don't do. It
Right.
becomes almost a desperation.
Yeah.
Like, okay, it's there, I can win it. I just need that money at the time. Let's just do it. But you have to be committed to your brand, and you have to stick to your brand, and you have to, there's some sacrifices that go into that. I'm sure,
Yeah.
like you could have easily have won a lot of contracts as a stub, but you stuck to
Yeah.
your guns, and you knew the brand that you wanted to show your clients, and you stuck to that. And
Yeah.
and that really is really key to me.
Wayne, can you speak about your willingness to sell your company? A lot of us are in love with our baby. I'm not selling it. Selling it is so far from my mind, but I don't hear that from you. I hear you built it to sell it.
Yeah. So I'm not necessarily emotional about businesses, because they're just it's easy to start a business. You start one tomorrow, and I think it's about creating value. And when I got to the point where it was a private equity deal that we were involved in at the sale, it was first of all, we were a buyable asset because we had prime contracts. So no one was going to buy us because we had subcontracts with big companies. So that was our primary, so it was worth it to be smaller and prime and focus on a core area than to be big and sub. So there's nothing wrong with that business model, but you're not going to be able to sell your business. And I just felt like it was just the right time for me to exit the business because I had other things I wanted to do. So I didn't want to, I just wanted to kind of get back out. And for me, as a CEO, I was finding I was spending all my time being a CEO, and it means managing human capital. It means managing the financial structure of the business, that sort of thing. I wasn't doing the work, and I actually love doing the work, and I love working with clients directly. So I want to get back to that as quickly as possible.
Doni, do you have any other questions before I start my other section of questions?
Did race ever come into play?
No, because I wouldn't allow it to come into play. And the way I approached this whole thing and continue to this day is like, I'm an expert in my area. I publish, I write, I blog, I do all the things that establishes me as an expert. And that's what my message is. It's not about my color. I mean, if I walk into a room, I'm a black man walking into the room. I take up a lot of space. But my point is, it was never it was never a marketing message for me. It was never a barrier for me because I would not allow it to be a barrier. I competed on expertise, and I encourage every small business to do that. Don't try to be all things to all people. Find out what you're really, really good at, what you're really passionate about. Be the best in the world at it, and use that as your platform.
That's right.
And be places where you're not supposed to be. Be places where you're not supposed to be.
That's right.
Don't expect,
God told me, he was a football coach. He said, run the ball where the other guy ain't.
Exactly. I mean, people will in the federal space, like any marketplace, they'll put you in a box if you let them. You have to define your brand. And as a founder, CEO, or founding team, it's incumbent upon you to define your brand and defend it and back it up and don't afraid to dig in and be an expert. If you're in the construction business, as I mentioned, things are going towards sustainability and building materials now and environmental issues. Become an expert in that area and use that as your platform. If you're in IT, if you're not in cloud and digital and AI, get there. That's where the puck's moving to. So really, invest in yourself and as a founder or CEO, you are the company.
That's right, and stay loyal to your brand. I think that's a huge message.
Critical.
Yeah,
critical.
yeah. And so, so we're wrapping up. Thank you so much for your time. But I did want to ask you. You talked about your customers and how they're evolving, and when you're dealing with the government and getting them to think on a commercial side. And this is some of the frustration I had with Baltimore City. is that they don't think that way. It seemed like the federal government was more, and some of the agencies in the federal government were more open to trying to accept commercial practices, best practices that came out of the commercial world versus being stuck in the government mentality. We did things this way for 100 years and this is how we're just going to keep doing it. And that was a huge frustration with me with a local municipality, which it's very systematic, and it is an epidemic in those spaces. So how do you maneuver that, or is it possible to get customers or get our local government to start thinking more commercial and stop thinking so government and inefficient?
Yeah. So that's actually something that has to happen, right? But you can't do it as a small business. You can't take on that burden of changing the culture of governments yourself. That's a policy issue and a voting issue in many respects. But from a small business standpoint, or I wouldn't say small business, just business standpoint, there's this idea of customer selection, like picking the right customers for you. So what I try to do and still try to do is find customers that are aligned to what I'm trying to sell, what I'm trying to my proposition. So in the government space, I spent a lot of my time on this is a secret, so write it down. The Government Accountability Office, GAO.gov, they audit every federal entity on an ongoing basis, whether it's a sort of holistic audit of practices or more targeted things, but they dig deep into every federal agency and they find the problems. And I use the identification of those problems to really get deep and to know where the customer's priorities were. Because once it's in the GAO report, now it's a priority, and that's where we're going to spend money. And that's something that they're to pay attention to. So GAO.gov has every agency up there, and you can dig into their problems and then position yourself against those problems. But yeah, I think that, again, to kind of close out, it's not every customer is your customer. So you have to find the ones that for me, that want to become commercial-like entities or business-like entities. And it wasn't every one of them. It was a subset of them, but I focused on that subset and won them.
Okay.
Nuggets, Jules, thank you for joining us, Mr. Wayne. Thank you.
My pleasure. I wish you guys all the best, and it's great conversations.
Thank you so much, Wayne, for joining us.
All right, take care.
Take care.
All right, bye.
Bye. Well, that was really great to talk to someone that was able to grow their business to a point where a large business, wanted to buy. And so, and he just so happened to be my brother. So I'm glad he gave us a little bit of time this morning.
Don't be emotional, Donnie. That's what he said. Don't be emotional. Dina, unmute yourself.
Good morning, Dina. I see a familiar face.
Good morning. How are you? It's good to see your face again.
Good morning.
Good morning. So you guys ready for me?
Yeah. So you're going to do a presentation on Baltimore City program.
Hello. How are you?
Doing good. Kerwen, we can barely see you though. You got that daylight behind you.
Oh man,
it's all good. It's all
Chicago
good.
daylight.
I'm not used to being on air. I'm a behind the scenes kind of guy.
Okay. So Dina, a couple of years ago, I met you with the Small Business Development Program, which came out of the Department of Public Works here in the city of Baltimore. Wonderful program. Exposed us to so many things. Can you tell us about it and the significance thereof?
So for the city of Baltimore, this program actually was developed from the consent decree that Baltimore City has in fixing aging infrastructure. So to do that, we are supporting the mayor's initiative and task 3 that I am the champion for, or the Office of Boards and Commissions is the champion for. That task is outreach and economic development. So with that, I do have Kerwen Whatley, who is, I would say, my partner in this training program. And the program focuses on outreach, workforce capacity through business and community partnerships, such as this. And we can do more partnership with you if that is something, that would allot. But this effort is critical and established to assist the city by providing contract assistance, contract education, and eventually contracting opportunities for a business or a small business to participate in DPW and the City of Baltimore's small business programs for smaller contracts. So the 5 things that I really feel that a business should do, and it's just my 5 things, that is to plan. I feel that you need a detailed business plan. I feel you need to know the needs of products and services that is wanted in in the marketplace. I shop while a business may be closed, but you should be able to Google a business and you should be able to find what you need. Your business will have to be flexible to make quick adjustments. It may be based on getting paid promptly, which is a little difficult with the city. We are trying to work on prompt payment, but it is not there as yet. So you may need to adjust, say 45 days to getting paid. So you have to be,
oh my God, I'll be dead
then. Well, you can't be attached. You can't be attached to it. You can't cry over your business. So you got to let it go. Remember, Wayne just taught us that, right? So you have to constantly plan, and that may be an adjustment that you have to make in planning for your business. My other thing is to know your business. You should be able to sell your business by me coming to ask you what you do. I want to be interested to go buy that new pair of shoes because it has something on it that I absolutely love. And a shopper, Tamara, and I will absolutely wait 3 months to get those shoes. So you have to be able to sell your business. You got to make sure you read your contractual documentation and understand all aspects of it. The city can't really help you fill out your documentation. With the SBD training program, we can, Kerwen, my partner, can actually guide businesses through to know, but you want to yourself know your business. You want to know how to fill out your documents. You need to understand every aspect about your business and how it will function, how it will sell to the market.
Okay, Dina, I'm sorry to interrupt. I wanted to go back.
Okay.
I wanted to go back to, because a lot of us don't know, or a lot of our viewers may not know about the consent decree and what the foundation of the consent decree is and how this small business development program started with the Department of Public Works. So the consent decree was with the EPA. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. And so basically the consent decree is where the federal government or the city has to make these improvements within the infrastructure and report back to the federal government that they're improving. So there was a finding that there were some issues, particularly with sewer work, is that water and sewer work. And so and stormwater, right. So can you talk a little more about the consent decree? Now they hear consent decree and they think the police department, but the city also is under a consent decree with the Environmental Protection Agency, the federal government. So just talk a little more about that.
Yes, and I'm going to allow Kerwen, because he is our partner in this. So I'll allow Kerwen to speak a little bit more on the consent decree.
Sure, no problem. Thank you guys for having me. But the consent decree program, is a wet weather modified consent decree program. And Tamara, you are absolutely correct. The city of Baltimore did have some issues, as violations as it relates to contaminating the public waterways. mainly the Chesapeake Bay and others. And the EPA, Department of Environment, and the Maryland Department of Environment both mandated that the city of Baltimore fix the wastewater collection system so that they would stop polluting the natural waterways. This project has been going on for some time now. It is grown to be approximately a $3 billion program, and the city is mandated to get this work done. And the city, to its credit, when understanding and realizing that this work had to be done, they wanted to create a way that local small businesses and residents could benefit, from this work that has to be done. And that's when the Small Business Development Program was created. This program is an 11-week program. We cover a variety, of topics and subject matter. We have subject matter experts that come in and teach these training modules. We cover everything from bonding, construction accounting and finance, construction best practices, contract administration, estimating and bidding, MBE WBE certification, business pre-qualification, safety, and scheduling. And one of the really large takeaways from this program is that you can walk away with your 10-hour OSHA training, and we also provide opportunities for our small businesses to engage and network with prime contractors that are doing this type of work. But one of the things that I also like to give kudos to the city for is creating prime contracting opportunities for small businesses. We've had businesses that have been able to get work as prime contractors, and that's a big deal. And that's a sign of commitment from the city of Baltimore to its small businesses and to a program like this. And in a lot of cases, it's just a show of good faith. But in Baltimore, they're actually creating opportunities for small businesses, and I am certainly happy to be a part of what's going on right now with the city of Baltimore and its small business development program.
Well, thank you for that, because that's a surprise to me to hear that these small businesses graduating are actually getting opportunities. I know that when I was with the city dean and I had many talks and meetings about getting these businesses into a space where they can even bid. And so there tend to be the contracts are too large for them to get the bonding for these small new businesses to even provide that kind of work. I know a lot of the wastewater and sewer contracts have gone to out-of-state vendors. I mean, that's the truth. What happened is with the EPA, the city was aware there were issues. The findings were there. The Small Business Development Program was developed to help get more diversity into that, knowing that we had to provide billions of dollars into fixing this infrastructure. And by the way, there's more money coming from the federal government to fix infrastructure, so the state and the city will get even more funding. And so we're going back to our last presenter, where you look for the problem, you create your business around that to solve those problems. You have to present yourself that, hey, I can do this work. The issue is that the contracts are just too large. A lot of these water and sewer contracts are huge. So it's surprising for me to hear that small businesses are participating as prime. Sorry, Doni.
Yeah,
so
well, just speak to that.
We have there has been some unbundling. You and I spoke from the first time I came in and met you. I spoke about we need to unbundle contracts because they are too large for our smaller contractors to obtain. Doni was in class, and that was my main thing that I always speak about. But we have a contractor who you know too very well, Tamara, which is B&B Partnerships. They are absolutely they are a prime contractor. They've teamed up with three other businesses from the SBD program, and they have a prime contract on CCTV. So we do have some success stories out of this program. Do we need more? Yes, we do. The city is working, and the mayor's initiative, he has talked about unbundling contracts. So we look forward to more. But yes, we have had some success stories from the unbundling of contracts and what we are doing with the program. So it has truly paid off. And not just in the city of Baltimore, but worldwide, the EPA consent decree goes on because our infrastructure is so very old. But Baltimore actually was the city who took the initiative to develop the small business program. Not everyone has it, not everyone has to do it. This is something that Baltimore City actually took the initiative to do to try to grow, small business and develop them into prime contractors. So Baltimore does. I'm proud of the work, but we have a lot of work left to do.
So do we know how many businesses are performing as primes that have graduated out of the program over the years?
Right now, I know for certain that there are approximately five firms that have gone through the program that are operating as a prime in some capacity. Some of those are City of Baltimore, but they're also doing work in the region. So they're, so people have gotten some benefit out of the program, and we try to keep in contact with those vendors to kind of see what they're doing. We also invite them to come back and be a mentor of sorts to current cohorts of the class. That number hopefully will continue to grow.
What can we do to get this program replicated in other city agencies?
Doni, I really think that other city agencies need to join us so that we have a bigger pool of contracts for firms. I feel that resources will be wasted if we replicate it in different city agencies because we'll all be doing the same thing. And we can certainly borrow people from different city agencies to join us. But I do feel that resources will truly be wasted if we actually duplicate this in rec and parks and DGS. We'll all be doing the same thing. So I actually took the initiative this year for our program because we were virtual. And prior to that, we had a contracting roundtable where we had Mr. Harrington, R.E. Harrington and Sons Plumbing. We had him on there representing the contractors, and we had Spinello. We had Whitman Reichert and Associates, Kerwen, and also can't think of the other one.
The other one was a vertical firm. It was it escaped me, but yeah.
Okay, well, we had two contractors and two consultants to talk about the needs of subcontracting and how you could directly contact them. We also I had every city agency on, including housing, parks and recreation, DGS, DOT, and DPW, so that we could talk about the needs of the city and things that we were looking for, and also contracting opportunities. So we did pull everyone together. I do plan to do a little more of that this year to see what we have, but due to the pandemic and the freeze, we've had some challenges, but we do have a lot more federal money coming in. So my goal is to ask everybody to put out a contract that is obtainable to a small and local business, not one that starts off at $1 million or $3 million, which a lot of our contracts are bundled up to be.
Dina, Kerwen, and I'm not talking about the mayor, the comptroller, the city council president, but do our city council people understand the program? Do they know about it? Do they understand it? Are they advocating for it? We have to start grooming more of our elected officials. We're in a majority Black city, majority Black elected officials. But from what I'm finding, not enough of our elected officials understand the need for this program and the need to grow our businesses.
So what we usually, the Office of Boards and Commissions, I usually have a FaceTime with primes that we invite the city council to, and that gives them a greater understanding of the program, where they can go and talk to different vendors to see why they're there, what they're doing. And we also actually have the SBD program there that they explain what the program is and the 11-week course. We have had some council members who have stopped in the past. So we'll continue to reach out to them to ensure they understand the greatness of this program.
So how about, let me ask you like this, so as to not get anyone in trouble. If a Black person is looking to run for office in the city of Baltimore, what should they know? What should they be doing to be a better advocate for our businesses? Come on, Kerwen.
Well, we don't want to get them in trouble. So.
Well, it's not even to get in trouble, but they should know that businesses need an opportunity. So they should know that we need to unbundle some of our contracting processes to help our local economy out. That is the way that we grow the entire economy, because if you start off small, then, people grow big, but it brings so much revenue and resources to the city.
Right.
Okay.
A city is only as good as their small business, right?
You are. Yep.
I like that. A city is only as good as its small business.
That's right. So Dina, you and I in the past have worked together, and part of the frustration. This is a great program, but again, that's why I was asking how many are actually performing work, because you can certify and you can educate businesses, but having those statistics would be great for people to see how well a program like this is really working. Because it's no use in educating people if they can't get the work, And also, while I have the time, I do want to express, as a constituent and a taxpayer in Baltimore City, some of the frustration. In Dina's office does pre-qualification, which we're going to soon ask you some questions about what that means. But small offices like the one that Ms. Joyce runs are very important to our small businesses. The program that she has, they have such a responsibility, but are typically very short on staff. So unfortunately, we see a top-heavy administrations and the people that do the actual work don't get the support. And so that's part of my advocacy, is to ensure that those offices that help our businesses, that can empower our businesses, are staffed. And this is another office that just is not. So she has a heavy weight on her shoulders and not a lot of support. And I would love to see that change. So Dina, can you talk about the pre-qualification process?
Yes. So the pre-qualification process for the city of Baltimore, it's a unique process and it's a procuring process. But for pre-qualification, it's for our design to construction firms. So with this process, you have to fill out, for consultants, a 254, and that asks you about your business, your licenses, the principles, are you in good standing? That is, and I'm sorry, I have to divert for a minute from pre-qualification. Paying your taxes in the state of Maryland is the only way that you can be a legitimate business and continue to do business. We have people who come to us to become pre-qualified, or we have a prime who wants to team up with them to put them on one of their teams. And then we go to Department of Assessments and Taxation, and we find that their business is not in good standing. And so we get lashed back because we can't pre-qualify them. And they'll say we'll be, done by the time this contract is coming to us. Well, you had to be pre-qualified prior to that because we can't
essentially they gotta pay that $300 each year. And if
They
you owe
have
that, don't even come down to the office and waste your time.
Well, I won't say don't waste your time. Just know that you have to go back to the Department of Assessments and Taxation to be in good standing so that you can do business with anybody. That is one of the other 5 important things that I was going to say about doing business. But back to pre-qualification for a contractor, there's like a 7-page application. We do need your finances for contractors so we can know your financial capacity. And you do have to be self-performing to become pre-qualified. You can't say that you do cleaning and you actually don't do it. You can't say that you do design work and you really don't do it. You have to be self-certifying. You have to, it's a self-certifying program, but you have to do your own thing.
So by that you mean you can't have a company and you're one employee and then you're subcontracting all of that work. You have to actually
50% of your work out. Yes, you cannot do that at all.
Right.
So that is the biggest thing. But we advertise. I'm sorry.
They can't be fronting.
No fronts. We also advertise projects for all city agencies. So after when we're putting out the projects, people submit their 255s to us with their team on there that we have to verify everyone's pre-qualified and you are able to do that, that work. So
that you have to be pre-qualified to do construction and design work. Is there a certain, is it if you're going to do any work at all or a certain amount of work? What kicks that off where I need to be pre-qualified?
So it was changed to $50,000 and above, but for the MWBE and contracting offices, if you're using a firm to meet your minority goals, we have to be able to count that firm. And so since I've been here, we've changed the RFPs to state that all firms need to be pre-qualified because we can't find that firm. And it's for the firm's protection because some contractors have a harder time getting paid, but when we don't know that they actually participated on that contract because they were under that threshold, it causes a problem, a bigger problem for the city, but it also causes a problem for the smaller firm who actually cannot get paid because we have no relationship with them. So in qualifying everyone who is on a team has been a better fit for the city.
So you're pre-qualifying people for every agency?
Yes.
I know those. I'm sorry. So are the agencies, and I hate to get into this, but are the agencies providing staff or support or funding for your office? Because that sounds, like a lot of work. And I know, of course, it's not electronic or digital. You're dealing with paper, and I firsthand know the frustration in that and the time it takes. And so, are the agencies contributing to your office? Just a question for me.
No, and we actually pre-qualify people worldwide. So we pre-qualify people from California to Maryland.
Right, because anyone could do business with the city, yeah, as a prime.
Anyone can do business with the city as a prime or for design to construction, projects. You can do business from $50,000 over to above $8 billion. We do not discriminate you doing business with the city. So it is a lot of work. It is a lot of work, but no one else. DPW does, fund our office, and we are working to do that now. Julie Day, who is the chief of staff, has actually set up things and trying to, in process, to gather and provide some more staff for the Office of Boards and Commissions.
Okay. This is interesting. It just sounds like it should be an outside entity, outside, not within DPW, but in my mind. But that's just me. So I'm sorry, Doni, go ahead.
No. So with just a couple of minutes left, any final thoughts, Kerwen?
The only thing I would say is encourage anybody out there listening that if you have a small business, if you are a business that do any type of work in the area of concrete, construction, program management, excavation, landscaping, underground utility work, post-construction cleanup, scheduling, sediment and erosion control, sewer construction at all, site work or traffic control, then this program is for you. And we invite you to come out, fill out an application, and be a part of the 2021 DPW Growth by Design Small Business Development Training Program.
And so applications are open right now for that program?
Applications are open right now, and you can find them on the city's website, DPW, and go down to the Office of Boards and Commissions tab, and then you'll see Small Business Development Program application.
Okay. And when are the applications due?
The applications will be accepted from now through, I believe, the beginning of August.
And the classes start?
The classes start in September. The beginning of September.
Yes, the first week of September.
It's a great program. I enjoyed it. I learned so much. And if you got another slot, I'd like to do it again.
Well, come on back. We got you.
Well, we do have scholarships that people can actually fill out to get a scholarship.
How much is it to apply?
It's only $199, and for that $199, you get 11 weeks of training, and you also get the OSHA, and the OSHA alone is worth like $1,100, I believe, for just a 10-week program.
Just for the 10-hour OSHA training.
So you get a safety OSHA, which is a safety training, a certification.
Yes. And that is included is $199 training. But scholarships are available if they go on the website and it's under DPWs and it's under pre-qualification. You'll see that information right there.
And they serve dinner. Oh, a great dinner every night.
And it's a hot dinner because Dina likes to eat.
The brownies are delightful. Keep that vendor.
Well, thank you so much for all the hard work you're doing, Ms. Joyce and Mr. Whatley. It's very important and near and dear to me, small businesses, and particularly our minority businesses. So we really appreciate the work that you're doing and the passion that you have. And we hope you can get some staff.
Thank you. And Tamara, for your time with the city, Tamara has helped so many small businesses in payment and just subcontracting, and how she did that process. You were a tremendous help to the city, and I can attest, and I do appreciate everything you did when you were there partnering with me. Everything. And thank you for having me on. And I have to thank Yolanda because she actually listened to your show last week, and she was like, you have to get in touch. I'm going to give you Doni's and Tamara's numbers so that you could get in touch with them. And you need to go on here and talk about what DPW does. So that I have to thank Yolanda Winkler. She's with our communications office. But yeah, the program is truly great in the aspect where we are one of the first major cities who actually took this under our consent decree program because it wasn't a mandated program. So this is something that DPW actually did for the city of Baltimore.
We'll be sending emails to make sure that you have the staff that you need to be very successful. I'll be starting those emails Monday morning.
Why, thank you.
So thank you very much for joining us today, Kerwen and Dina. We're going to move on to our next segment. But however we
Thank-
can be of service, do let us know.
Thank you, guys. Have a great weekend. Thank you for a great show.
Thank you.
Happy Saturday.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So Tamara, I gotta ask you, did you hear the kudos you were given?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Dina, we work very closely together. She's very passionate about small businesses as well. And really unbundling contracts was, I remember, one of her huge frustrations because she was running the training. And, what's the point of training people if they can't even bid? So I appreciate her passion, but I do know the work that she's doing. And she needs technology and she needs support. And again, my huge argument with this Baltimore City specifically is you do not staff offices that do real work, that make a difference with our businesses, that make a difference with our economy, that ultimately impacts our public safety and jobs. So they have to invest in those small offices that actually do work.
Let me also say, Tamara, it is so refreshing to know Adina, to know that you have Black people, and typically I would say Black bureaucrats, but Black people in position. It's one thing to have Blacks in elected position, but I'm talking about people like Dina within these agencies who get it. This is what I mean. As a business person, if you're dealing with the government or anybody, private company, when you submit your invoice, it is your hope that there's someone on the other end that says, oh, there's Donnie's invoice. Let me process that. As opposed to somebody just putting your invoice in a pile of other invoices that don't get paid. And
That's right.
net 45 will kill a business. Net 90 will kill a business.
And she was being very generous with net 45. I will tell you that. She's being very, very generous by saying 45 because that would be great. So there's businesses that are experiencing less than 45 or more than 45 days of payment.
But in order for our businesses to be successful, it's a teamwork thing. You need a Dina Joyce, you need a Kerwen, you need people on the inside that understand this business needs to get paid. And I say that, Tamara, with all due respect. I think I've seen your majority businesses not only get paid on time, but sometimes up front.
Yes, depending on who you know. And these small businesses don't know anyone. So we need to protect people like Dina. We need to protect those offices because we can't have them infiltrated with people that don't care. So we have to make sure our city council is even aware of the office. Like to your point, a lot of them don't really know how things are operating. They're not aware of all those small offices. And we have to protect them. So yeah, sometimes a prime may get paid up front, which is crazy. If you have a small business working under you as a subcontractor, you're supposed to pay them within a few days. And some of them don't even do that. And that is how you put a small business out of business. You're getting paid and then you're not going to pay them. You're just going to hold out, make excuses, and then you can put your potential later competition out. So that's why our businesses aren't growing in the city. They're just not growing because the prime vendors are getting away with so much because of who they know.
Also, it's political will. And again, we're talking about the local, the state, and the federal. Your brother mentioned as the administrations change, often the agendas change, and he was alluding to the presidential administration. Well, on a local level, that would mean the mayor. Next year, 2022, is a gubernatorial election. And so in a city like Baltimore, which is 9-1 Democrat, a state like Maryland, 2-1 Democrat, you've had a Republican governor for the past 7 years. So a person coming in on the Democratic side wanting to be governor, it would behoove them to understand these issues. Because Republicans are very, very business oriented. We need our Democrats to be very business oriented too. We need to eat. And so if you got a Democratic governor that doesn't understand net 14, net 60, net 6 months, then they are of absolutely no use to us. And why would I vote for someone that's of no use?
Right. I believe that Antonio Hayes actually had some legislation last year that I saw where they're actually changing changing the 30. I think they were trying to make it to 15 for the state because they recognized that the pay, they were getting a lot of complaints, I imagine, of payment. And payment is just really an issue in general. Doing any business with these small municipalities, even with the federal government, it can be a delay. But I've never seen anything net almost more than 100 days of not getting paid. No one can survive that. However, the people that are pushing those buttons are getting paid every 2 weeks.
Tell me what is a mobilization cost?
So mobilization cost is like trailer and setting up for, it's specific to construction, and mobilization is the electricity at the site, like setting up so that you can do the work on a site. They'll have a trailer there, they'll put electricity with the trailer, they'll set some things up so that the work can get done. So the fencing, like just getting prepared to do the work on the site. So it's just the prep work.
So mobilization cost is money that's provided to a business up front because without certain things in place, the business can't take place.
I don't know if money is provided up front. Just typically, you have to provide a service and provide an invoice for any service with a city or state. You have to give them an invoice. You have to do something to get that money.
Okay. Do Black companies get mobilization costs in Baltimore?
So if they're bidding as a prime on a construction contract that has a line item for mobilization, it is part of the overall contracts and the estimates that they submit to the state or the city to get paid would include some of that. So I've never known of anyone getting money up front for mobilization specifically. That's just part of their overall bid is, mobilization, cleaning, like just everything they're going to do on the project. They scope that out and that's how they submit their bid. I don't know about getting paid up front for that. But if you're a prime, that should be part of your bid package, the mobilization cost.
Well, let me ask you this. What is the most that should go to mobilization out of 100%?
I think it's 10% or less generally. I'm not an expert on that. I did look at a lot of bids, but it's generally not more than 10%, I think.
Okay. So let's do a recap. Can you tell me some terms that we've covered? I just don't want to, presume that people know them. For instance, MBE, Minority Business Enterprise, WBE, Women Business Enterprise, DBE, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, and what's veterans?
It's disabled veterans. Mm-hmm.
Disabled Veterans Enterprise. And can you tell me a little bit about the veterans and what's available to veterans, especially considering that many of them have risked their lives, all of them have put their lives on the line. And your brother talked about, he was a vet, he's a veteran.
We're both veterans, yes. Yeah.
Thank you for your service.
Oh, yeah. And our father is also a veteran. So what's interesting is Baltimore City doesn't have a veterans program. Before I left the Minority and Women's Business Opportunity Office, and we did the RFP, and that term was used a few times. It's a request for proposal. When we were sending out the request for proposal for a disparity study, I did include a veterans qualification or a veterans program language to see how the city is doing with veterans and giving them opportunities for contracts, because that's not part of the program right now. So a veteran program, if you're a disabled veteran by a certain percent, you can get federal or I think the state has a program as well. You get certified as a veteran. I believe you submit your DD 214, which is a form you get when you get out of the service if you're honorable discharge and you have a certain percentage of a disability where you're receiving payment for disability through the Veterans Administration. So you can qualify as a vet, and then you're able to get like points, or, you know, a certain percentage of business should go, or of contracts should go to a veteran business. So
I need a couple of minutes to line up our next guest. Can you help me out?
Sure, no problem, no problem. So some of the other words that some buzzwords as a proposal, and for me, when we talk about minority businesses, a lot of the reasons why jurisdictions say that minority businesses don't have the capacity, but in my experience, working for large firms and doing large federal bids, back in the day, we would actually not have the capacity for those contracts. We're still able to bid as primes because we could send out contingent offers. So we would just request a lot of resumes from people and just say, we will contingently offer you this job if we win this contract. So, you know, just to say that minority businesses may be small, but they don't get the opportunity to submit a proposal with being able to do something like those large businesses do. So capacity is generally an issue for everyone. I don't want minority businesses to think, oh, I'm so small and I can't bid, because that's what the large contractors do. Like, I work for large companies like BAE Systems and SAIC, large federal defense contracting companies that didn't have all the employees they needed, but they still were able to submit a bid and win those contracts. So anyway, we're talking about proposals. We're talking about RFPs, a request for proposal. There'll sometimes be an RFQ, a request for a quote, where the government is looking for a quote for a business, and then they may put out an RFP after. There may be an RFI. You may see that terminology, and it's a request for information. They're just gathering information to do some requirements gathering, and requirements gathering is typically what any federal, state, or local agency does before they put a contract out. They'll gather the requirements. They may look at what Mr. Simmons was talking about, the GAO report, and say, oh, we need to fix these things. This audit has come out, and we'll gather these requirements. And so we may send out an RFI to say, hey, we have these needs. How would you resolve that? And then they'll put out an RFP, which is a request for proposal, and you'll submit your proposal within a period of time. So that's just some terminology you may see when you go on to some of these sites.
Your brother described this as war. I mean, he didn't say this, but I could, if he's military, he said, don't be emotional. You have to invest in yourself. If you're going into a particular field, you not only have to know the lingo of local, state, and federal contracts, but you must know the lingo of your industry, from branding to marketing, knowing the elected officials, knowing the agenda, knowing where things are going. It's more networking.
Yeah.
It's not knowing, it's knowing who's behind the contracts, who's agreeing on the contracts. So it's not just who you know, but what you know about who you know.
Right. And that can be a disadvantage for a small business that doesn't know anyone. But I think what was really important for him to say, and I really find a lot in our businesses, is their lack of marketing. And I think that's where my brother was very successful, is branding and marketing. Some businesses, when we would certify them, they wouldn't have a website. The website would, it's just a basic website. You have to invest in your business, and you have to market yourself as an industry leader. And don't just think of yourself again as a small, oh, I'm just a small business, or I'm just a minority business. No, you're a business, and you want to put yourself in a position where you're just as good as the big guys. You're providing the same service. A small business can provide the same service as a Whiting Turner. It's construction. But you just need to put yourself, you have to have that big mindset. And that's what I think I wanted to focus on, and why I wanted to bring him on the show today, is because our small businesses have to stop thinking small, and we have to start thinking big. You see that Chihuahua walking down the street, and he's barking at the big dogs. he thinks he's just as big as the others. So you have to have that mindset, and we want to encourage everyone, not to limit yourself and to think like a big business and compete with those big businesses. So I'll go.
Give me one more minute.
Okay, sure. Oh, sorry, I was muted. So I'll go back to some terminology. Ms. Joyce was talking about pre-qualification and getting your business certified. Through pre-qualification, that's really important. That would be something that I would just do if you're contracting with Baltimore City at all. I would just go through her office and double check and not wait until it's too late and you can't be on a contract. So that's something that you definitely want to contact that office and see if you're required to get pre-qualified. She'll probably tell you yes. She'll overwhelm herself with work voluntarily, but just to make sure that that business is ready and prepared to do business.
And kudos to them for giving up part of their Saturday morning. I mean, that's the level of commitment that it takes. I mean, clearly they could be doing something else better with their time. So let me just say, we've talked about business in Baltimore. Mm-hmm. We've talked with New York. Wayne Simmons is in New York and he's a serial entrepreneur. Yes. If I'm not mistaken, we're going to now transition to the West Coast. Now, I think it's about 8:15 in the morning out there. One of the people who has been mentioned on this show is Ron Busby, and he's the president of the U.S. Black Chambers. As we talk tomorrow about people we should know. And Ron Busby, I've known him, I guess, 12 years or so. That's when they first started the U.S. Black Chamber down in D.C. I think he's originally born in Oakland. His family had $14 million business out in Arizona. And he came to D.C. about 12 years ago, started the U.S. Black Chamber. There's also another Black Chamber that's much older. I believe Harry Wolford runs that chamber. But Ron, I've got a chance to work with. I've literally bumped into him at the White House. Do you know how it is for two brothers to bump into each other at the White House? You never forget that. And then one day out in Portland, Oregon, we were attending the National Newspaper Publishers Association, and we literally bumped into each other out there. But he's introduced me to some business leaders across the country. Earlier this week, last week, your friend Keisha was interviewing Amy Griffin. And Amy Griffin was the founder of the New England Black Chamber of Commerce. But she's now in D.C. and she runs a law firm down there, one of the largest Black women, if not the largest Black women-owned estate planning law firms in the country. But I wanted to segue to something that you informed us about of what's happening in Boston with Segun Idowu, where Segun and others, his group, they sued the city of Boston because their MBE program wasn't cutting the mustard. You want to touch that?
Yeah, that's right. So a group of minority contractors associations, I believe it was a Latino group, a Black Contractors Association group, and I think there was another, actually brought a claim against the city of Boston for their minority business enterprise program not meeting, it just wasn't working. I believe the last disparity study showed 1% of minority business participation on contracts, which was really far away from their goal. And so they brought a claim with the Justice Department for the federal government to look into the use of the program in Boston.
Okay, so tomorrow we're about to talk with Art and Tammy. They're from the Oakland African American Chamber. And I'm just going to slide out so we can get a better camera angle for you. But
yeah, hi, how are you?
Hi, hello.
So Doni, I'll slide out, and so Doni will be able to interview you because he knows more of your background. And then, do you want to do that, Doni?
No, No, you're more than capable. You're more
Okay.
than
Okay, thank you. So hi, how are you? Thank you for joining us this morning all the way from Oakland. I know it's 8 o'clock in the morning. I love Oakland. My husband and I were there, I think it's about 2 years now. 2 years ago, we went out there and I was shocked at the weather. It was so cool and no one had air conditioning, and that just kind of blew my mind. But at any rate, please introduce yourself and tell us what you all do out in Oakland.
All right, my name is Tammy Willis. I'm the CEO of Magnolia Engineering and Construction. And I'm a fairly new firm, but we're all women-owned and run firm. And I'm also on the board of the Oakland African American Chamber of Commerce. And
my name is Art. Everyone calls me Doug Blackshear. I am a advocate for small businesses, specifically African Americans. And listening to your show this morning, it's very clear that this is just not an open problem as it relates to doing the disparity studies. As you know, Oakland just had one which demonstrated out of $450 million, $450 million a year, 86% of those dollars go to white men.
Wow. Wow.
You're on the right. Also allowing the opportunity to say that, and I talked to Doni, Tammy and I talked to Doni last night, it's important that we all know that on the federal, state, and local contracts, our politicians have a hand on making sure those dollars are fairly dispersed within our community. Black people aren't looking for a hand out. They're looking for a hand up. Having access to resources that will help run and manage those contracts, which will help grow a business, it is well known by the big white machine that without those resources, you cannot operate and grow your business. And that has been a huge hurdle, not just here in Oakland, but listening to you across the country. And until we address that, and I would just, if you ever heard of Oakland East Bay Democratic Club, I would just ask the chair, Labor and Economic Development. And what we've done here and what we're going to do here locally is create a report card for our city council, our mayor, our board of supervisors, our state and federal representatives to show their constituents who look like you and I what they are and what they aren't doing. Because some of our politicians, let's be brutally blunt, and I'm not going to get any brownie points from the political leaders.
Advocates never do, so it's okay.
Our politicians are selling us out. The politicians are selling us out. These big white companies are coming in here, lacing their pockets with a few $1,000s, and destroying the Black economics in our cities.
Right, and they're utilizing the very programs that are supposed to make up for that hundreds of years of not getting any business, and they're using those programs as a cover. And I hear about your disparity study, but I guarantee the numbers are actually probably worse. Because I've done studies on the people doing the disparity studies, and depending on what company it was, they spit out canned reports a lot of times. So Baltimore City is undergoing a disparity study right now. I looked at the last disparity study, and I can tell you that those numbers are not accurate. And so when you have politicians selling you out, they've chartered those disparity studies and they control the staff that's overseeing those disparity studies. And so I guarantee you the numbers in Oakland are probably worse than what you just reported, because those consultants just want to get in and get their money and get out. There's no, and the people giving them the numbers, you're only as good as the numbers you're getting. And a lot of those, they don't really track. Like I've rarely found any state or local government that's truly tracking the use and the payment of our minority businesses. So I know Oakland's undergoing a huge gentrification. And so I'm just surprised to even see the number that you said. I guarantee you, realistically, it's probably a lot less. So
I believe the percentage going to African American and Black businesses out of that remaining 14% is, I think it was 6%. And Dr. Eleanor Ramsey, who performed it, I met her, and Tammy knows her personally. I feel confident that those numbers are pretty accurate. 6% out of $450 million, which is peanuts.
Right.
And I would like to further say that we all across the country who are part of these Black chambers, and I attended the one back in 2019 and I met Ron Busney, which he's from Oakland, California. Skyline, I better Cosmo. But the point I'm making here is, until we band together in order to get those big federal dollars, we got to let these politicians know that our eye is on them and have a report card to show the constituent, because they can't get their jobs if we don't elect them.
Absolutely. So what is the makeup of your politicians? What does it look like in Oakland? Your council members and your mayor, what is the demographic? Or is it mostly African American?
I would say it's the African American is diminishing. The representation is diminishing. The Asian, our mayor is white.
Okay.
But as a whole, the strongest advocate we have here is Barbara Lee, and she's well known across the United States. But in regards to our local representation, in regards to having access to the Capitol and contracts, most of our politicians, and once again, I get kicked out every time I go out to these Zoom meetings, they get angry at me because I explain to them, do your job. You got Black businesses who are homegrown right here, but you want to go to Wyoming, you want to go to Idaho, you want to go to and bring those contractors here to make the million that will take that will help reduce the number of homelessness and joblessness here in Oakland. But they don't want to do that.
It makes pure sense, right?
It's gentrification at its best.
Well, what's good for California is that Baltimore City, their IT contracts, their information technology contracts tend to go to a lot of California companies. So, we're paying for travel for people to come over here to do work for us, which I find very interesting coming from the West Coast to the East Coast when we have companies here that can do that work. So it sounds like, I don't know, maybe they're trying to help the airline industry and hotel industry to bring in people from out of state to do work for people that can do it in state.
Well, as we move forward, everything that was talked about this morning, I can identify with. I ran a construction company and ended up having to sue not only the general contractor, but because the general contractor had to contract with the county, I ended up suing a whole ball of wax, and at the end of the day, I won. But let me be perfectly clear here. For those Black businesses who are willing to stand up and fight injustice and economic development, those white men have billions of dollars. And what they do is they drag it out until the average Black brother and sisters company go out of business or run out of money. Let me be clear. I stayed in my mama's basement. I stayed in my mama's basement for 3 years fighting this lawsuit and won. But a lot of people don't have that. They have houses, they have kids in school, they have responsibility, and they can't do that. So once I won mine, I said, you know what? I'm going to start fighting and I'm going to start advocating for those who can't do what I did, who can't stay in their mama's basement for 3 years to fight and get that money that they won legally because of an illegal action done by these big corporations. They have legal departments that are designed to say, they put $1 million. It took $1.3 million to fight me, which they ended up, anyway, I can't go into detail.
Attorney's fees, they had to reimburse yours, I'm sure, right?
The point I'm making here is it's by design. Them white men have a slush fund to the side that's set up to say, hey, we're going to run these Black people out of business.
And that's discrimination. And that is, And when the city of Oakland participates in that, and when our local leaders participate in that, you are enforcing discrimination. And so my fight as an advocate here in Baltimore, I actually worked inside of City Hall and saw it happening with all Black leaders, which is quite interesting. So you think you have Black leaders that are going to help your businesses. And so Doni was talking about what they did in Boston, which I brought to his attention, which I would love to see happen across the nation. Boston has filed suit in the federal government. They filed a complaint for discrimination within the program itself. So we'll see how that goes. I commend them. We're going to try to talk to them about what they've done, those minority organizations. Maybe that's something that needs to be done in Oakland. It definitely needs to be done in Baltimore. It needs to be done, I believe, in Washington, D.C. So I think that in any civil rights movement, the attorneys have to take a lead, and we have to find a good group of our attorneys that are going to be that Thurgood Marshall, that are going to move forward and identify this. And I don't think people really get it. I don't think a lot of people understand what's happening in these minority business programs, what's happening to the minority businesses. It's not getting the attention that it should. It's not small. This is not a small issue. This is a huge issue that is impacting us across the nation, and something has to be done about it.
I just want to step in for a second. Tammy, you run a business too, and I can't get in trouble. Kathy Adams is not going to put her foot in my butt, but you have something to say also. Come on, Tammy.
Yeah, so in response to the disparity study in Oakland, the Oakland African American Chamber formed a committee, or a task force, if you will, to reach out to larger contractors to make sure they're using minority and local Black-owned construction companies, as subs. So that's one of the things that are, I see that as really being helpful, because if nobody's watching, then they won't be using the Black contractors. So that is one of the really good things about the chamber. That task force is really helpful. So we have lots of contractors as members of the chamber. So the chamber is giving these larger contractors lists of people, because I guess some of the larger contractors will say, well, we can't find the minority, or we can't find the woman-owned construction firm. So now they can't say that here in Oakland, because they get a list of the women-owned, Black-owned construction companies, which they can pull from. So that's one of the things we're doing here in Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just being subs. We need to start being the general.
Yeah, no, that
Absolutely.
In joint partnership. And Tammy, in her business, is one of the premier businesses that could possibly offer that to these large contractors. And let me be perfectly clear, working on a $450 million plus project, building a hospital, building 2 hospitals, Highland Hospital in Oakland, California. These white people don't want to work with us. Tammy's business, and I was explaining it to some of the contractors, general contractors, if you joint partnership, joint venture, and you cannot learn how to build a building if you've never built one, and if no one's going to teach you how to build one. They don't want to help them build it, and they don't want to teach us how to build it. So until we address those issues, we can't be a general. We can't go into partnership. And they know that. And the politicians know that. Right. That's why they take those dollars from the big company to run their campaign, while their constituents are still taking a hit and becoming homeless and losing their job. We got to address that.
We do, and what I see is we try to do it, and we think we're voting in the right person, because a debate is only what you're going to say. Your campaign promises is words, but we're in a society where there's so much going on, and we're getting so much news. It's information overload, and that causes short-term memory. And so what happens is, just like you're saying, there needs to be accountability and a scorecard. For contracting, we need to have them for our politicians, and we need to have public sites, and we need to have the public really engaging and educating, because what I see is, people will base their decisions off what they're saying, and they haven't done anything. So they get in, and you forget what they said 4 years ago. And it sounds good, and they haven't done anything.
I met when I was going through my challenging the big white machine. We met with a local county supervisor, and I won't mention any names, but he said one thing with me and my attorney and did something at the end of the day once you get through discovery. But the point I'm making here is these politicians have to step up, man up, woman up, and take care of those companies that we don't have that generational wealth. My daddy, and my dad's dad were not able to give us stuff like white people's daddies and grandpas and grandpas. So we need to be solid and firm in where we are today and say, look, enough is enough. Share the wealth, or we're going to vote your butt out of office. The politicians who are selling us out and getting rich for themselves and not looking at their constituents.
Right. And they get into it. And I've always asked, and my whole question when I was briefly in public service, and I will tell you my story, I was put out of public service because I was doing the work for the people. And I was actually penalizing the big guys. So when you start penalizing those big boys, they're like, what are you doing? You can't do that. So I had to go. And so basically, that's the problem. They're not public servants. They're corporate servants. And you walk in and they walk with their chests very high and will quickly tell you that they're public servants, and they know they're not serving the public. And so the integrity of our leadership is at an abysmal low. And I don't know what the solution is going to be, because the moment you think you can believe in someone, they change up, and it's the same song and dance. So Tammy, you have an engineering company, is that correct?
Yes.
And so what I found interesting with engineering, architecture, and design, that is where performance, particularly for Black women and Black men, is so low. And what I found challenging, we have deals with developers that come into Baltimore City. And I remember sitting down with a white man telling me that when I said you have to use Black architects and you have to use Black engineers, they're very established. They're there. We have very brilliant engineers. And we were talking about an architect at the time, and he told me that this design is not a box. And just limiting the creativity of our Black architects. So that's the mindset. And if you don't force them, it got to the point where the developer had to send a different representative because that white man had insulted me as a Black woman, and they couldn't send them to the city. He had to send someone else. And I was very, that's discouraging. So I know in your field, it must be a challenge to get any participation, because by the time they come to the table with a design, they're not thinking about, if you have goals, minority participation goals, they're not thinking about going to a Black woman for engineering project. It's an afterthought.
That's right. That's why the program with the chamber is so important, because it's not just me going out and talking and trying to be included. We have a whole task force that's speaking on our behalf, making sure we're included. So, that's why that task force with the chamber is so important. And I'd like to see that implemented in other cities, other chambers, other Black chambers, because that's important. I don't feel alone in trying to be included,
Right.
We have a whole team of attorneys and, business people and, people behind me pushing. So
Oakland did a disparity study. Do you have a program within the city that sets participation goals for minority businesses? Do they have goals on every contract?
Well, yes, they do. But the disparity study, actually, it just came out maybe 2 or 3 months ago. So they're kind of working on, streamlining things around the disparity study. So it's fairly new. Actually, the disparity study actually isn't new, but because they're putting things in place in response to it now.
Oh, okay. So Oakland doesn't have an office that focuses on, within the government itself, that focuses on increasing minority participation. It's not a requirement on a contract that they have 5%.
Yeah, it's a requirement, and we do have offices set up for that. But I think now that the disparity study is in the forefront, I think now those people doing those jobs are like now at the forefront doing what they were supposed to do in the first place.
Okay, so this is Oakland's first disparity study?
No, it's not the first disparity study. I think it's pretty much the first one that's been on like display.
Oh, that's interesting. I wonder what the past disparity studies even look like. I'm sure it was probably worse.
Can I just interject? I've talked with people here in the state of Maryland who have said that the disparity study is no more than a copy and paste of the last disparity study, and the numbers are exactly the same.
Yeah, I think with ours, we have a Black firm who worked on the disparity study, who completed it and submitted it, and I'm pretty confident that their work, was really
Mason Tillman Company. I think they've established themselves as very reputable, and Dr. Morangi, a very intelligent, articulate sister who doesn't mind rattling the cage. But there are two critical components here. Small businesses, specifically where Tammy comes in, they must be accounting, tax, and must have legal services. Now, this woman sitting next to me here, she is an accomplished accountant, used to go audit for the Department of Justice and the U.S. Attorney General. So it was easier for her to come in and say, look, you can't deny me this opportunity, and you won't deny me this opportunity. And I'm just very glad that I'm here working with her, advocating for her, because the second component is legal services, and she has several attorneys working with her. But we don't understand those contracts, and we don't know how to invoice to get our money. And without those two, you're going to get duped, and you're going to get short.
Yeah, and that's one of the things Magnolia Engineering and Construction we're working with other contractors, small local contractors, to show them or kind of make sure that their accounting is right, their contract compliance is,
Right.
So that's one of the things, that's a component in our, not only do we do engineering and construction, we added that piece to what we do. Is I have more than 12 years. My background is with the U.S. Department of Justice with audit and contract compliance. So
and let her know who you audited, who you compliant.
Yeah, I did a lot of audits with FBI and DEA and other agencies within the Department of Justice, and then agencies who received money from the Department of Justice. So I did that for years. And then I was the audit manager for the city of Oakland. So I can help out not only with the construction side and engineering side, but with the accounting and contract compliance.
Right. A lot of small businesses, their front office, their administrative, that is very difficult for them, particularly in construction. But most small businesses, when they are contracting, it is difficult for them to get the invoices in on time. They're estimating, and when you were talking earlier, Art, about the large white companies knowing that the minority business can't do certain things or sustain not being paid. One of them is the estimating, and a trend that we see, particularly in construction or in a lot of contracts. And I don't know how Oakland awards, but Baltimore City awards the lowest bidder. And of course, if you're a large firm and you've got sophisticated tools to do the estimates and to figure out how much you're going to charge for your bid, submit your bid very low, and you have more resources, you're gonna win, and then you're just going to charge the city later and make that up with some kind of change order or something. I mean, that's the trick of the trade. And so our small businesses don't have that ability to run their office and submit bids on time with a competitive price.
Art, I wanted to ask you about mobilization costs, upfront monies that we are typically not afforded to get a project started.
I'm glad you brought that up. You are so astute to detail, Donnie. It's critical that one must, especially a Black business, must understand when you start a contract, whether it be federal or private, in California, the law is you get $1,000 or 10% of that contract at the signing of the contract. But when you move your first piece of equipment on the job site, you move your first computer into that office, you can ask up to 10% of that contract. So if it's $1 million contract, you can say after you step into the office, put a piece of equipment on a job site, you can ask for 10%. So 10% of $1 million is $100,000. We don't know that, but let me assure you, the white boy knows that, and the white lady knows that, and they're not going to tell you. So these are the types of things that we need to be sure to let our up and coming new contractors and subcontractors know. The general contractor gets that 10% from the government, but they don't tell the small local Black and brown businesses and the woman-owned business. So we're operating because we can't get the money from the bank, the loan. We got $1 million contract, but the bank won't give us $2 on that contract. But if you check the records, the white companies get that. The white companies are allowed to have that. In regards to the mobilization too, with that 10% of the contract, do you know how easy it is for that small business to manage and operate and grow? It is important that we articulate, get your money. Cash is king. Don't say, well, I'm going to try to hold out until invoicing. That big white company is getting every penny it can from the government, whether it be their money or your money. They might not share your money with you, but they got your money.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was not aware that you could get that upfront. I never was in the real invoicing process, so that's good to know. And businesses need to be aware of that, to ask for that 10% upfront as soon as they step onto the site. That's very good information. Thank you. And I know that when we're breaking down contracts, a lot of times our agencies, I would see mobilization costs in there, and they would not set goals. Like, there would be no minority participation in that whole initial upfront 10%. And they try to talk you out of establishing any goals to that. And so that's why even if you're subcontracting, you won't see any payment off the top, because they're probably convinced that, oh, well, this is work that only we can do, setting up the trailer and electricity and all that stuff. But in fact, it is work that could be subcontracted to a smaller business, and they could get that money immediately.
Yeah. And then the second part of that, and which helps out with the mobilization money, is called prompt payment. Now, when I was working at working with building the hospital, which was a county hospital, working with Barton's Mother, ask for prompt payment. They can pay you as quickly as 7 days. That's very quick, but minimum 14 days. We don't know that, and they won't tell you that. But they have prompt payment as early as 7 days, as early as 14 days. You just keep doing the work, keep invoicing, and keep getting paid so you can pay your bills and grow your business.
Right. So the trick is and again, that's why I believe that a lot of jurisdictions, government entities, they're discriminating against our businesses directly, their policies and their practices. And when you can prove their policies and practices are in fact discriminatory, then you can make some waves in the courthouse. So basically, what happens, and the trick is to send back the invoice to say this or that is incorrect, and not approving the invoices. So prompt payment is there, but it only starts when the invoice is approved. And if your invoice isn't approved, then you can't get paid. And so for a prime contracting, when you're submitting it, they can delay, and, oh, this isn't right, and you keep going back and forth and changing it, and that clock doesn't start until it's approved. And then as a subcontractor, your prime contractor could keep sending it back to you. And I've seen this game played many times, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and you're going back and forth for 60 days. And then they finally approve and accept your invoice. So but there's not static invoicing. There's not electronic invoicing. And that's how jurisdictions kind of hold things back and keep discriminating against people, because there's no standard of doing things, and you're constantly rejecting something. I'm not going to get paid. I'm just not going to get paid.
Well, at one of the larger projects I worked on, they gave me several subcontractors, and a lot of us can do the work, great work, but our office cannot invoice to get that money. So that's where Tammy has really made big headways when she's talking to some of the bigger contracts. One is actually courting her right now, been to their construction school, and she's taken, I think it was 2 courses.
Yeah, 2 courses, 2 10-week courses.
Yeah, because a lot of our companies, they can do the work, great work, but getting paid is important. And when I was training the subcontractors who I was assigned to, cash is king. Don't let your inability to invoice. So we used to train people, and then some we end up having to do that work. But what I want to point out this important point. The company that we were doing the training for their subs, which became our subs, they got paid for it, but they didn't pay me for it. And they got paid a lot of money. So I point that out to this. You need a lawyer to look at every word that's in that contract. If you put a pencil on a job, you invoice. If you put a paintbrush, a hammer, a truck on a project through disclosure, when I went through a legal dispute, I found out that every white boy on that job was getting paid for every truck that they had. I had a dump truck up there for 2 years. They said, no, you can't pay for that. We just, found out that every white boy on that job was getting $300 a day for their dump trucks.
Wow.
So you do the math. $300 a day times 5 times 4 times 12 times 2. How much money did I lose? Plus interest.
Art and Tammy, I got to bring up this one thing, and this has been a dynamic session. Tamara, you got to tell them about B2G now. My understanding, Art and Tammy, is that there's a software that is available that can be used to hold the municipalities, the contractors, the primes, the general contractors accountable, and make sure that MBEs are getting paid or being used and getting paid.
Well, Tamara and Doni, Tammy and I will be out in Maryland in the next month or 2. So we definitely want to get some addresses changed. My dentist is in Springfield, Maryland.
Okay.
I'm going to give her a plug. Rochelle Hackley's Dentistry. She's been noted to be one of the best in Maryland.
In Silver Spring. Is that where she is? Black.
And she's black.
Yeah, Black. She's in Silver Spring. I believe my uncle uses her. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You tell her you talk to her cousin. We're on our way back out there in the next couple months. So we would love
to meet up. Yeah. So what Doni was talking about is where I was asking if you had an office within the government that does monitor the contracts and set the requirements for MBE participation. There's a system, there's a Black-owned company, Early Warning Software, that has a system called Prism that does contract compliance. And then their competitor, B2G Now, has a compliance software. So essentially what it is the municipality will enter all the data, all their contracts, and they'll be able to spit out and generate reports on performance, which should be public. You shouldn't have to wait for the disparity study to see how it's doing. Every year, a jurisdiction should be able to report on how they're utilizing MBE businesses every year, because disparity studies are every 4 to 5 years. You can't wait for that. You can't wait for the next disparity study. So the only way to measure how something, yes, Donna Stevenson of Early Warning Software has developed Prism, and that is a system that everyone that has a program to monitor participation, you have to use it. And so it will show month by month if the subcontractor has been paid. It's a web-based program where you should be able to go in, and the subcontractor will say, yes, I've been paid X amount, and you can measure every month how a contract is going. Don't wait till the end and it's like, oh, they only used me 2% and they were supposed to use me 10%. It's too late. Like, what are you going to do? So it's important to have compliance software. Every state, every county, every city, everyone should be complying with requirements and be able to show you. You should be able to ask Oakland today, how did they do with paying minority businesses last month?
Yeah,
the disparity study's over,
And I don't know that we do that. So I'm gonna check that out.
A lot of people are not doing it, and that is a way that you hide the data.
Yeah.
Everything has data. I'm sure they can tell you data about, how many shootings they've had, how many police officers, how much overtime the police officers have, because police get all of the money. And so, you can get statistics from any state, again, local, county, but you can't get statistics on how minority participation is month to month, how much is being paid out month to month. Every 30 days, you guys should be getting, your chamber should be getting a report on how performance is on contract X. If there's 10% minority participation, I want to see how it's going this month. I don't want to wait for another disparity study. And that's what I want to enforce on anyone listening. Don't wait for a disparity study to see how it's going. You should have that data today, every day.
And I'd like to point out this. Contractors get their money for the outreach at the beginning of the contract. Oh, well, I got 10% minority contractor. Soon as they get that check, they fire all of them, or most of them. So what we're petitioning here, and me also working as chair of labor and economic development, we're petitioning here, hold that 10% to them rich white boys until the end of the contract. I guarantee you there'll be more success rate because they're gonna want that money, and they can't. When we as a government give them the money at the beginning, we take away their incentive. Okay, we got our money, fine. They make up reasons. I've seen it. I've
seen it.
Make the contracts both locally, state, and nationally to where if you get $100 million contract and you get 10% for using minority participation, you only get that 10% if you have 10% at the close of the project.
Absolutely.
If you
actually, Baltimore City has legislation, and I want to share that legislation with you because it seems like Oakland needs to catch up. But they're not enforcing it, and that's the problem. It's one thing to have legislation, but actually, it is the prime contractor doesn't get paid the next payment if they haven't paid their subcontractor within 7 days after being paid. Let's say I was paid in May. 7 days, you're supposed to pay, and there should be liquidated damages in contractual language in every jurisdiction where you're paying a penalty, $100 a day if you haven't paid your subcontractor. And so that is that you can't wait until the end. Again, you have to monitor them every 30 days because they will get away with everything they can. And so you should be able to see that, and it should be in legislation, and there should be penalties applied because you signed out of this contract and said, I'm going to use Tammy's company, a woman-owned engineering company, for 10%. And then you in fact don't do it. That's a breach of contract. You should be penalized, and so they have to do that. That is actually a breach. That's how you want it, and you need to perform accordingly. Otherwise, you should be financially penalized.
And another key thing for those listeners who are listening who want to do government contract, a general contractor will slap a boilerplate contract in front of them and say, hey, you got to sign that. No, you do not. Do not be bullied by these people wanting the contract and the language of the contract. The language of the contract is determined by those white contractors' lawyers who are looking out for those white contractors. You get your own lawyer. Call a friend. Don't get your jailhouse lawyer, but call. There are lawyers out there who will work with Black contractors, Black women and men contractors, and show them, okay, change this language here to where instead of this, instead of that. We think that, we got this contract. Sometimes that contract could be the torpedo that sinks your ship.
Yes, I actually experienced that in a very large contract with the city where the subcontractor agreed to a contract.
Me too.
Yeah, and they the language was such they can only use one person on a contract, and they signed it. But using that one person, there was like a 15% minority participation goal. They would never meet it. With the volume of the contract, it was such a large contract, and I believe it was a company, of course, coming from out of state. They were never made it with that, but that's what they signed, and they used that against them when they didn't meet the minority participation goal and said, well, they can only use one person. So it was absolutely impossible. So they didn't look at that language. But Oakland or the jurisdiction should have also written in the contract language that they get a copy of it. Because if I'm this city and I'm telling you you've got to use these minority businesses, I need to make sure your contract. So the city's lawyers need to work on that and make sure that you're telling me I have to, you're making me use this minority business. This is what the white company is saying. And that minority business needs to say, well, since you're making them use me, make sure it's right. I mean, they need to review that contract to say it's in line and you can actually meet that goal. So some of that responsibility should also come upon the city itself to ensure that their minority businesses are protected, because you can't make the white business use the minority business and then help them put you out of business after you've made them use you. It's ridiculous. And so there's some responsibility on the city to do that as well. This has been a great conversation, Tamara, and I can't wait. We're going to talk after this. I'm going to give you all my information, and we're definitely going to, again, I think this is a nationwide problem. And if you look up Boston and their chamber out there, that the suit they filed with the Justice Department, they filed it just this past February. This is an action that I think needs to happen across, and I think we need to all get together, all these chambers, all these activists, and we're having similar problems across the board. I spoke to Boston before this happened, and they were telling me that their office was saying something is wrong here, and they knew it. So I think we need to get together and we need to form some sort of coalition. We just need to go after all these cities and after all these counties and hold them accountable.
I do too. Go Boston with the first Black female mayor.
Yes.
Follow my politics.
Yes, hopefully she can fix the issues that are there. But me having Black female and Black male mayors here, I don't feel so excited. Okay. I'm hoping she can, but I've seen it here and it's bad. So
Kate said all we got is hope.
Yeah. Because they look like us. I always say that, we always say that doesn't mean they're for us, but I'm praying for Boston.
And I would like to end my part by saying, no boilerplate contract for you Black and brown brothers and sisters out there. Don't believe that. Get you an accountant, somebody who can invoice. It may cost you a few dollars on the front end, but you'll make it up on the back end, and get you an attorney. I guarantee you that every large, small, medium, white company has an attorney, and they're not looking in your best interest. They're looking in their bottom line. If they can take out of your $1 million, $50,000 out of your money and line their pocket, they're going to do it, and they are doing it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any closing statements, Tammy?
No, I just want to say, like I said before, I would like to see, what we've done at the chamber implemented across the country. So I know that's something we can talk about offline, but I think it's very helpful how we have our advocates at the chamber pushing for minority and women-owned business. So that's something that is big for me, and I'd like to see that implemented. And,
absolutely.
Talk about.
Yeah, so reach out to your local advocates, reach out to your local chamber, and hold the chambers accountable. They're supposed to provide support, and they need to. It sounds like they're doing a great job in Oakland, and we'll talk offline and get more information in exchange, because we're stronger when we're together. And I think it's just time for all of us to come together and protect our businesses and to make sure our businesses are strong. That's going to be the key for us elevating to where we need to be in a space we belong in. And that's a successful space. So thank you all for joining us. Doni, I think, is going to close us out.
Well, I'd like to say the Oakland African American Chamber of Commerce won the #1 Black chamber in the United States. We need to point that out. Led by Kathy Adams, our great president, and her treasurer, Tammy Willis, who sits on the executive board. Yay, Oakland African American.
Wow, great. That's great, Oakland. Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
Doni?
Thank you so much, Art and Tammy. Thank you very much, and stay blessed.
Thank you, Doni.
Thank you for having us.
Tamara, we did good, kid. You did good. You did good, kid.
Oh, Doni, you challenge me every week. I had no idea, but thank you.
There was a lot of synergy there. I learned a lot there. And, we didn't even really get deep into Tammy's business, but to my understanding, she has one of the largest Black woman engineering firms, not only in the state, but in the country. And that's powerful.
Wow.
this is the era of women, Black women in particular, if you ask me. Black women mayors, Chicago, Boston, St. Louis. Thank God we have you.
Absolutely. So again, Black women, we are stepping up, but I just encourage every Black woman to stay strong. Don't fold. Remember why you're there, and and be a public servant. If you're in public service, don't forget how it was when you didn't have an advocate. So
Art also spoke to something too, and he was very transparent. Grown man. But do you know anything about Curt Flood? Curt Flood played for the St. Louis Cardinals, huge baseball player. And as Art was talking about how he had to take a step back during the lawsuit for 3 years and stay in his mom's basement. Curt Flood, if it weren't for Curt Flood and a few others, there would be no free agency in baseball. But before that happened, Curt Flood was on a hiatus deep in Europe. He was, drinking a lot. He ended up, being much of a derelict. Came back to the States. But in the whole process, let me bring you back, Art. In the whole process, he was suing American baseball. Curt Flood sued American baseball and he won. Yes. He sued baseball and he won, Art. He won. And you now have free agency today where our athletes can make millions and millions and millions of dollars. White boys too, Latinos too. So I commend that sacrifice you made because, like you said, a lot of us couldn't have done that, Art. Okay, those are my final thoughts, Tamara.
Thank you, Donnie. Thank you.
Okay, we'll be back next week, same time. Tell all your friends, tell everybody. Tamara, you are the bomb. We appreciate you. Tammy, we're proud of you too. Tammy, what's the name of your business?
Magnolia Engineering and Construction.
Kudos to you. Congratulations, because that is tough. A Black female engineer doing what you're doing. We commend you. Thank you.
Thank you.
To God be the glory. We'll be back next week. And stay tuned to BlackUSA.News. Have a great Saturday, everyone.
Thank you.